Wait a minute. These guys are modular too? Oh, I should get to some kit bashing. Wow! I'm old Big Mek, the king of kit bashing, and this is the Red Ones Go Faster, where we are the premier YouTube channel about Warhammer 40k modeling. We are all about the kit bashing, the saving the teeth, and making your armies as cool as possible while not giving Games Workshop very much money. So, let's talk about the top 5 armies you can kit bash yourself. Let's get into it. That's right, for all of you non-Greensons out there, welcome. I am indeed old Big Mek, and you have stumbled upon the coolest channel on all of YouTube for Warhammer 40k kit bashing, building, and other hobbying. There are a ton of channels out there that cover miniature painting that are fantastic, and a whole bunch of channels out there that cover tactics and battle reports, all equally amazing. However, there is a huge dearth in the middle of what you do in between buying a kit and painting a kit, and that's where we come in. Now, obviously, this channel is very orky bent, and we talk about the greenskins all the time. However, that is not the only thing we cover. We are definitely all about everything 40k here, and the number one question that I get asked all the time as the Kit Bash King is, what other armies are there besides orcs that you can kit bash like orcs? So, I'm going to tell you my top 5 armies that you can use in Warhammer 40k that are the best for kit bashing. And by the best, I mean like you have the most available other Games Workshop models and kits to use to make your army to save money and still be like fully tournament legal and all that stuff. Obviously, you can go 3D print any army you want and go play, and it's going to be about the same cost. We're talking specifically about people that like to chop up plastic kits, glue them back together, and have an army that is super cool and totally Games Workshop legal. And if that excites you, then this is the list for you. All right, let's get into it. All right, first of all, for my Orky brethren, you can go ahead and fast forward a little bit because you already know all this stuff. For everybody else, Orks are indeed the best army for kit bashing, and I'm going to tell you why in case you're not aware of it. The number one reason why these are so good for kit bashing is that they exist in every single Games Workshop IP. You can play Orks in 40k. You can play them in Age of Sigmar. You can play them in Old World. You can play them in Underworlds. You can play them in Warcry. You can literally play them in just about anything. There's even kind of sort of Orks in Lord of the Rings. Not that you would combine that, but you know what I'm saying. It's literally everywhere. Whether you are playing Blood Bowl or Necromunda, or really anything. I don't know that they've done specific orc kits for Necromunda in a long while, but there used to be one back in the day that had at least one orc in it because he was a bodyguard thing. Anyways, I digress. They exist in every single IP, and they are nearly compatible right out of the box across those IPs. The Old World Orks famously are the exact same ball and socket style body and legs as 40k Orks. It's just that easy. And even the ones that aren't, if you've got to chop them up and whatnot or glue different hands on, it still works. They are still orcs. They are super identifiable as orcs. Now, obviously, that works great for all of your infantry, all of your characters, everything like that. But 40k, one of the biggest, hardest parts of kit bashing is honestly vehicles. And that's where orcs kind of take the victory from anything else out there, because orc vehicles are, by design, kind of haphazard and kind of thrown together. And so you can kind of kit bash basically out of garbage or sprues or whatever you want and make orc vehicles. We are also famous for looting other armies and their vehicles. In fact, it used to be an entry in the codex called the looted tank. So if you roll up and you see an orc army and all of the trucks are literally a rhino and a chimera and a gene stealer cult truck, you're not going to bat an eye, because that is exactly something orcs would do in 40k, versus if you roll up and someone's playing Tau, but all of their robots are like Space Marine dreadnoughts. That doesn't check out, right? So that's where the orcs really do take the victory in being kit bashable. It's because famously, every kit is an orc kit. I've proved it. Check out the link. All right, let's talk about the next one. Now, despite everything I just said about why Orks are best, because they are across all of the IPs, and their vehicles are not unique, you could steal everybody's, this next one is the complete opposite. But it's also no surprise. It's Space Marines. Regular old Space Marines. Now, I know what you're thinking. Old Big Mek, you're making no sense here, bud. You just got done telling me all these reasons why Orks are great, and the Space Marines have literally none of those. Haha. True. But Games Workshop famously makes more Space Marine kits than all other kits combined. That's been a rumor since the dawn of time, since back in 2nd edition when I started. And frankly, you walk into any friendly local game store that carries Games Workshop, and you can see why that might ring true, because there are a ton of Space Marine kits, especially compared to everything else. Combined with the fact that literally every single starter set across all 10 editions, well, Rogue Trader didn't have a starter set, but I digress. All of the starter sets, also 6th and 7th starter set, shared a starter set. Okay, again, doesn't matter. Stop being semantic. Every single starter set has featured Space Marines, and most of the double boxes that feature 2 armies also feature Space Marines. They are just the poster boys for a reason. So that means their kits are really, really cheap and easy to get, because they're the ones that are often on sale. They're the ones that are often used in those promo boxes and things like that. But the other reason why they are super duper amazing for kit bashing is that they are modular, fully modular, even more so than the Orks. You see, back in the day of Firstborn Space Marines, all Space Marine bodies were identical. You could just buy tactical squads out the wazoo and turn them into whatever you wanted. You grabbed 4 missile launchers out of the tactical squad sprue, plus a sergeant, and you got yourself a Devastator squad. It really was that easy. You wanted an assault squad? You could literally buy backpacks straight from Games Workshop and just glue on the jump pack instead of the backpack. It was that easy. Now, when Primaris first came out, it did get a little hard at the beginning, but now here we are almost, 10 years into it at this point, and they are just as easy as the old school Firstborns. You see, this kit right here has everything you need to kit bash every other Tactics armor thing. So if there is any kind of specialty unit that is in this armor, chances are it's got extra bits in that box. You combine it with this box, and now you've doubled your units. Literally, it just works that easy. And it's not just with 40k kits, because we do, of course, now have Horus Heresy, which gives you a really readily available supply of plain bodies, granted Firstborn style, but still, especially when you are kit bashing, units that are Firstborn units, or armies that are combined with those, or things like Legion of the Damned, or, other Lamenters, things like that, right? Any kind of Space Marine army that would have a lot of Firstborn in it still. All that Horus Heresy stuff makes it super easy. It also means those vehicles are a lot cheaper. So if you're down with Rhinos and Predators and stuff, and you still want to use, Primaris stuff for the squads, you absolutely can do it. So they're really, really, really easy to get a hold of. They're cheap, and they're really easy to kit bash. As a starter, if you've never kit bashed before, I can't recommend Space Marines hard enough. They are even easier than Orks when it comes to squishing them together. So this really is an easy, easy army. All right, let's get into some harder ones now. Psst, hey, before we do the next ones, can I plug something real quick? To redonesgofaster.com, link down in the description below. It's our merch website where you can get yourself some really cool Red Squig merch, as well as our actual channel design from BenBam. We even have these in black hoodies with full color ones, the whole 9 yards. And unlike those other kits, we got cool stuff like water bottles. So go get yourself some merch, support the channel, because we are sponsored by Games Workshop. I pay full retail for all of this stuff because I'm a nobody. So your support really helps me out to be able to make videos like this to help save you money on your army. Really appreciate it. All right, back to the action. All right, the first 2 are super easy. Anybody that's been in 40k for any amount of time can tell you those 2. Now we're getting into the harder stuff. The first one is going to be Chaos. Now, I know what you're thinking. Chaos Space Marines are really hard, old Big Mek. If you're doing World Eaters, you can only do World Eaters. Those new corn things are really hard to come by. Yada, yada, yada. Death Guard guys are so different looking. You can't really do... Yes, I know that. We are talking about generic Chaos, okay? The Lost and the Damned, if you will, which really needs a codex again, if we're serious about it. But if you wanted to collect a Chaos army, Chaos Undivided, if you will, maybe even a Demons army, you get to tap into, again, those other games. So these guys right here, I know they're labeled cultists and stuff. This is actually like from Blackstone Fortress, which was a Warhammer, like kind of RPG style game, but with minis, which was really, really cool. Warhammer Adventures, maybe? I forget what it's called. Anyways, but all those Blackstone Fortress kits had really cool Chaos things in them. All of Age of Sigmar has really cool Chaos stuff in it. In fact, a lot of those guys actually can be kit bashed into Space Marine looking dudes relatively easily. In fact, there are a number of Age of Sigmar kits that are actually sold as double kits. Obviously, your greater demons have always kind of gone back and forth between 40k and, you know, fantasy, but now you get things like Bellicor, who was this named greater demon, came out for Age of Sigmar, and you can use him in 40k. Or no, maybe it's not Bellicor. There was another guy. You know what I mean? Scarbrand. That's his name. Scarbrand. But yeah, as they get more and more into the 40k-ification of Age of Sigmar, the models get closer and closer and closer to the Chaos guys. So all of your like big ripped buff dudes that are only wearing half armor anyway keep coming out for 40k. You could just use the ones from Age of Sigmar. So you have to be a little crafty, you have to be a little cunning, but there are definitely options. There's also things like those Underworlds warbands and Warcry and things like that that can make some very excellent teams. Cultists, demons, things like that. So if you really want to do a Chaos army, again, you're kind of stuck on the whole Chaos Space Marines themselves, but all of your other units, your demons, your cultists, your champions, your Bizarro guys that are like only half Space Marines, things like that, you can absolutely kit bash and use things from other, you know, IPs. Also, again, there's that whole Horus Heresy thing. If you are doing Firstborn Marine style armor, you can use a whole bunch of those to make new ones. The new Emperor's Children are really great for that. The basic Emperor's Children troops are just those older style armors, and everything kind of goes back and forth really, really nicely. There's been a bunch of videos from other content creators on that. So, like, yeah, you could really get out there and use it. Also, again, vehicles. Old school Chaos Space Marines still use Rhinos and Land Raiders and Predators. You can steal those from Horus Heresy for a little cheaper than your 40k stuff. It's also easier to find all of these non-40k things on sale. If you're shopping around at like local game stores or online sellers that discount things, they're allowed to discount the non-40k kits more than the 40k kits. You'll also find like out of stock things or things that like aren't actively being sold anymore by Games Workshop, so then they're not subject to those prices, discounted way more. Like eBay and stuff, fantastic for finding these kits for way less than what they retailed for, and that's how you're saving the money on it. So yeah, get yourself into some Chaos, be a little spiky, and you can definitely have some fun. All right, the fourth army is going to be kind of similar. It's Agents of the Imperium, basically all your Inquisitor guys. Now, why this one is, again, because the codexes and the rules and whatnot for these guys are so bizarre. Basically, when it comes to Agents of the Imperium, you can kind of almost do whatever you want. Like, you want to run a unit of Grey Knights, you can. You want to run some Sisters of Battle, you can. You want a squad of Imperial Guardsmen, well, you can. Regular Space Marines, Death Watch, Custodes, maybe not Custodes, but you know what I mean. Basically, everything else is kind of okay to use with these guys. They also have these really weird Inquisitorial Agent guys, with which there are some very expensive kits out there that kill teams and things like that. But again, what you have access to are those other games. Specifically, Age of Sigmar and the new Cities of Sigmar range is super on point for using as Imperial Agent guys. Some of them even like literally look like they were designed for it, and then at the last second they like deleted the las gun and put on, you know, a revolver. It's that crazy close. So again, you've got access to a lot of these kits that are easier to find for cheaper, that have more discounts available to them, that have more bodies available to them. And once again, we are going to lean on our friend, the Horus Heresy, 30k if you will, because they just released a whole bunch of armies for both kind of the Proto-Imperial Guard and the Proto-Mechanicus that, again, are a lot cheaper per body than anything else out there, because again, they're wanting you to go play these other games. They have to bring the price down in order to entice you over there, but there's nothing keeping you from buying those kits and kit bashing them and using them in 40K. So you can make yourself some really cool Imperial agents and some Kasserkin and things like that using those Horus Heresy kits. And again, because you are so open to what you can use in these armies, it makes it a lot easier to collect things when you have a bunch of ranges available to you. So just something to keep in mind when you're choosing your kit bashing army is like what's available in your area, what kind of things aesthetically please you, and how much you're willing to kind of go out of the box to figure it out. If you are super into having a really eclectic looking army of a bunch of really different units, this is the one for you. All right, it's time for our fifth one, and I gotta say, I kind of struggled with this. In past years, this army would have been honestly right up there, like number 1, number 2 with Orks and Space Marines. Not so much in 2025, and that is, of course, Imperial Guard. Now, those of you that have been around the channel know that I'm a huge Treadhead and Imperial Guard fan. I have a number of army right there and right there for my Imperial Guard. I absolutely love them, but I'm old school. I've got mostly Valhallans, some Armageddon Steel Legion, some of the old school Tanith First and Only, things like that. I really love Guard, but none of those exist anymore. Guard got, I don't want to say nerfed, but that might be the right word. Guard got kind of nerfed when it came to regiments. We went from having Valhallans and Talon Desert Raiders and Vostroyan Firstborns and Mordian Iron Guard and all of these really awesome, flavorful regiments that were super fluffy and super rad to create out of other kits. You would go buy Empire Pistoliers from Fantasy before it became Old World, and you would kit bash those with Imperial Guard guys to make your own regiments. You would go get a whole bunch of Hive Gangers from Necromunda and make some Savlar Kim Dogs, right? Like, it was super awesome to make infantry units out of literally any other humanoid thing you could find, combine it with the tanks, and bam, you had yourself a really, really awesome Imperial Guard army. All of that has gone by the wayside. We only have 3 regiments left. We still have Cadians, who need, yeah, we just don't need to get into that. We have Cadians that look different than old Cadians and are just kind of funky. You've got the Catachans, which are still the old sculpts from 3rd edition. Yeah. And then you've got the new Death Corps of Krieg, which, I mean, are cool. But again, these guys are all really expensive. So unless you're doing Catachans where it's just old models for new money, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You can go do one of the other 2 regiments and just spend a bunch of money. So, like, how is this good for kit bashing? Well, I do want to say that the other regiments do still exist in theory, even though they don't in the rules. You can basically just run them as whatever you want. You can either make the squads look like Death Corps squads as far as like loadout goes, or Acadian squads or something like that. And as long as they're the same army wide, you're not going to run into any problems. And so once again, we're able to lean on our friend, the Horsey Heresy. Yes, that was on purpose. In order to get a bunch of bodies for cheaper, or play, just again, play that pre-Imperial Guard army as its own thing. You can even use their vehicles, and that's where we come in, is the vehicles. Again, vehicles are the most expensive thing to figure out and kit bash and use and do, and so either having access to a bunch of vehicles from other armies or from other IPs is where it's at. And again, Horus Heresy vehicles are significantly cheaper on the retail side than 40K, and also are available for cheaper because they don't have the same pricing restrictions. And once they go out of stock, or like, you know, they're not a regular store stocked item, it's a lot easier for independent shops to mark them down even further. Now, I know that's not nearly as many options as it used to be, and also I will totally call myself out and admit, when it comes to a lot of the vehicles, it's not actually possible. Yes, there's like some Sentinel Walker things, but when it comes to like the field artillery stuff, there really isn't a whole lot of anything that you can actually use for the field artillery. And now that all of these kits are either like totally locked into Cadians or totally locked into Death Corps of Krieg, it makes it a lot harder to then like buy the real unit and convert it up into something else. Now, all that being said, there's always Grot Guard. You could put Grots together and put them with some Imperial Guard tanks and have a Grot Guard army, and that is super rad, and that is definitely still a thing. Obviously, there are Orks out there that decide that they want to go be crazy, you know, Imperial Guard armies too. That is definitely a thing in the army. You can get yourself a bunch of Chaos Cultists, right, and Chaos Bodies and things like that, and run a Traitor Guard army using the Imperial Guard rules and whatever minis you want. And again, as long as it's consistent across the army, you don't run into any issues, especially if you play things like narrative. It's almost not just, you know, liked, but like people want it. They want to see it, right? So if you are willing to step outside of the Astra Militarum box and do something really fun like Grot Guard or like a Lost in the Damned army, Traitor Guard, something like that, or do like a total feudal world, or like really lean on the Horus Heresy stuff, you can still make a guard army that is going to be kit bashed and potentially cheaper than doing an Imperial Guard army, but that's really only because a straight up Imperial Guard army these days is absolutely insanely expensive. So yeah, that's why this one has dropped all the way down to number 5, and frankly is in danger of dropping off entirely. It's more so that none of the other armies that are left have the options available to them that the 5 we just discussed do. Think about Tau, for example. Tau infantry are very particular. They only look like Tau. Same thing with their robots. So you only have the Tau range to look at. Now, there is Kroot now, and, you know, Vespids and things like that, which are cool, and maybe you can lean into a bunch of those kind of things and do some kit bashing there, but frankly, because those units aren't very popular, they are available quite cheap. That Kroot Hunting Pack army is famously really dirt cheap on Amazon and eBay and things like that because they overproduced them versus the number of people that actually bought them, especially once they realized how few points were in the box, which is the other part of it. You need so many models to make an army that it just becomes financially infeasible. Same thing like with Mechanicus. Even though they do have that Horus Heresy army to lean on, and there are some kind of random other slightly Mechanicus-y looking things that you can do, these robots, and again, things from like Blackstone Fortress, you need so many of them, and the alternatives themselves are expensive too, that you're really not saving any money, and that whole army is still going to be hideously expensive. And again, most of the other forces are like that. Leagues of Votann, you're not getting them out of anything else. Even the Caradron Overlords from Age of Sigmar look entirely different. And none of the units like line up. They don't have any like big burly Terminator-like guys that you can use as like the Hearthikins or whatever they're called in Leagues of Votann. They just don't work. Now, you do have things like Eldari, and Dark Eldar, Drukhari, but again, same kind of problems that you're running into with all these other ones. Their vehicles are very, very unique. You're not going to get their vehicles from anywhere else. There are no other IPs that have them in there. So even if you could maybe get some bodies from Age of Sigmar using some elf-looking dudes, the way that they look has seriously digressed over the years, and it just doesn't work. And that's, again, just something that you run into with all of the other armies. So it's not so much that the Imperial Guard are still good enough to be in the top 5. It's almost that everything else is still so poor for kit bashing because you need so much of it, or there's just nothing else out there that is really compatible with it, that this is kind of left by default. Except for one. And that's Adeptus Custodes. Now, we didn't really talk about these. They're not Space Marines. They're not really in the Agents of the Imperium, unless I'm misremembering. But Custodes on their own, they're kind of interesting. They're a really expensive army to buy certain units of because they only came in Forge World and things like that. But if you are into kit bashing and kind of making your own crazy looking jet bikes or jet tank kind of things, you can kind of get there. But that being said, on the tabletop, they're one of the few armies that doesn't really need vehicles to be viable in Big 40K 10th and a half edition in 2025. You can take an all infantry Custodes force and be okay, right? So there's something to be said for that. Also, you don't need very many of them, which also is very nice. Now, that being said, where do you get other Custodes bodies? Well, obviously, you look at Age of Sigmar and you get yourself some Stormcast Eternals. They are substantially similar to just about everybody out there. Obviously, when you get close and look at them, the Age of Sigmar guys, the Stormcast, they have like the hammer with the lightning bolts and all that stuff, and all of the imagery is different. If you really want to get into it, you should like scrape all that off and use other bits from your Custodes sprues in order to like make them work. But the bodies are the bodies, and they actually do work really well together. In fact, when the lore change happened, where now that there's female Custodes, a number of painters online immediately went and used the female Stormcast bodies to make female Custodes that looked really, really awesome. And side note, okay, anybody complaining about female Custodes or female anything in 40K, grow up. First of all, if you aren't gray enough and old enough to remember Rogue Trader and 2nd Edition era, everything had females. There were cheerleader orcs, okay? Go do yourself a Google search. The first run of Space Marines had 2 different ones that were female. There were Inquisitors that were half Eldar, okay? Everything has happened in the lore. Second of all, they're little toy soldiers. Okay, who cares what somebody wants to play them as? Some of the coolest armies out there come from underrepresented groups, okay? Like paint schemes that are really awesome, kit-bashed armies that are really cool. That kind of stuff should be celebrated, not put down. And third of all, any mouth breather that's talking about that kind of thing probably has busts or like resin models of really scantily clad women and like looks at online fan art of Tau and Eldar females. So get over it, dude. There's nothing wrong with female Custodes. Am I clear here? Okay. Now that we got that out of the way, female Custodes made out of Stormcast bodies are really cool looking. And again, all the Stormcast bodies are really cool looking. So it's one of those armies where you could buy a Custodes box, and because they give you so many weapons options in them, you have 2 full sets, at least, of everything you need to make that unit. You just need more bodies, and those Stormcast bodies are really easy to get a hold of, and they help make that force look more dynamic because there aren't that many Custodes sculpts. So if you don't just want repeat, right? I've taken 3 squads of these guys, and all 3 squads are identical. You can actually take those, use those boxes, use the weapons and the arms and stuff like that on those other bodies and make a cooler force. So when I make this video next year, there's a good chance these guys drop off the list and Custodes are the ones on the list. Just saying. But we'll see what 11th edition brings. 11th edition might have something totally new. We'll see. All right, that's going to do it for this video. I really appreciate all of you hanging out with me today and taking a look at all of the armies. Do you play any of these armies? And if so, do you kit bash them? Let me know down in the comments below. Or if you're looking to start a new army, did this give you an idea of where to go? Absolutely let me know. If you have specific questions about like which specific kits you need to buy or put together in order to do these kit bashes, you should jump onto our Discord. It's linked down below. It's totally free. There's no entry thing to get in. You don't have to be a paid patron or anything like that. Anybody can join at any time, and it's a really, really awesome community, especially for kit bashing. Lots of really knowledgeable mechs on there that will help you out with getting your army from A to B for as cheap as possible and looking as cool as can be. All right, that's going to do it for this video. I got to go do some more kit bashing because that's what I do around here. And until then, Warhammer!